Hi, I am delighted to be here with Congresswoman Dina Titus on the occasion of Ohi Day, which is, everybody knows, we're commemorating the time that little nation of Greece said no to the big Nazi monster, as President Roosevelt said. So let's start by talking about your early life. What was it like to grow up in your house, and how Greek was it?
Well, I grew up in a small town in South Georgia, so there weren't very many Greeks there. There was no Greek church, no Greek neighborhood. But my grandfather was a very proud Greek. He was in the restaurant business, so we had the Greek food, and I learned at a very early age to count to 10 and to say sagapo and do this, and I was very proud of my Greek heritage, and my name is his name. He was Arthur Konstantinos Kathonis, and so I'm named for him.
Wonderful. Do you have any early memories of or stories growing up Greek that we can connect to?
Well, in the town of Tifton, there weren't many Greeks. We had to go to Jacksonville, Florida, which is over 100 miles away to get to feta and olives. But I did have some cousins in Albany, Georgia, and so we were able to go to some Greek weddings. In fact, I was the candle girl in my cousin's wedding when I was only about 3 years old. So we stayed very connected to the family and by long distance to the church and to the culture.
Do you speak Greek?
I do not. I wish I did, but there was no school, and I can just say, I love you, thank you, evkaristo, and kala, parakaro, just a few basics.
I know that there's a lot of Greeks in politics. So can you describe how you got into politics, and do you think that Greeks have a DNA that makes them politicians?
Well, we certainly have it in our heritage. You know, democracy goes back to the age of Pericles and Athens and the Parthenon and all of that. But I don't know. I don't think there are enough Greeks in politics, frankly. They're very political, but right now in the House of Representatives, there are only 3 of us. There's John Sarbanes and Gus Bilirakis and myself. I'm the only Greek woman. We need to get more young women involved. But I think my early introduction to politics was in my grandfather's restaurant. It was right on the courthouse square, and then the back of the restaurant was a big table, and all day long you had politicians, the sheriff, attorneys coming over, sitting at that back table, drinking coffee and talking politics. So I think it was that introduction that got me involved.
Definitely. I think Greeks love to talk politics. No matter
yes,
where they are, hairstyles, coffee shop, street, bus. I think you started off as a political science professor. I think you taught, right,
That's
at the University of Nevada, Las Vegas for 30 years, and you had a illustrious career. Students loved your classes. You had you had many awards, and then for some people that would have been enough. But instead of comfortably retiring, you started a whole new career in the public service. And I think you spent maybe 20 years as part of a Nevada state senator.
Yes.
And then after that, you entered the House of Representatives as a rep from the 3rd District in Nevada. And then most recently, you started a term, 2013, representing the 1st District. Why? I mean, what influenced your decision to just keep going?
Well, I went to school at William & Mary, and so, of course, that was in the heart of the American Revolution. That got me interested in political science. I was from a politically active family, so I guess it's in the DNA. And all those years I taught at UNLV, I taught American government classes. And then the opportunity came to be in the state legislature. And Nevada is unusual. We only meet every other year for 120 days. So that was almost the same as the spring semester. So I could keep teaching and then just go to Carson City every other year for the spring semester. And my students appreciated that. I think they liked me to be able to tell them what it's really like, not just what the book says. So I think being in politics made me a better professor. But I think being a political scientist made me a better legislator because I knew the process. And it was just one of those serendipity things, you know. The opening came up to run for Congress. And so I decided, well, why not? Better to be in the fight than not, and I did. And I was in the 3rd first, but with redistricting, I didn't move, just the lines moved. So now I represent District 1.
Awesome. We've been hearing a lot of news about Greece in the press recently, and there's been a lot of negative stereotyping. I mean, how have you dealt with overcoming any negative stereotypes of Greeks or Greek Americans, especially, being in a prominent place in the White House?
Well, I speak up as often as I can about Greece, and I encourage people to go to Greece, to get to know Greece, to get to know the Greek people. And I'm on many resolutions that mention different aspects of Greek culture and history, and in support of Greece, and asking the White House to be as helpful as possible to Greece during these economic times. But it does frustrate me to hear people, especially from the other party, stand up on the floor and say, well, the U.S. can't become like Greece, or we're headed down that path if we do too much social programming. And I just don't think that's a fair characterization.
Mm-hmm. What would you say is the best thing about being a Greek American woman?
Well, we're very fierce,
I like that. Fierce.
And very wise. You think of Athena, her symbol is the owl, and that kind of is the symbol of doing your homework, and that's what I do as a professor. I try to know what I'm talking about so I can make good decisions. But we're real fighters. That's why I say I think we need more women in politics who are Greek.
Now let's talk about what's the worst thing, or what's a challenge in being a Greek American female?
Well, growing up, you were nobody knew who Greeks were. You were kind of people who drank wine and ate garlic, that kind of that characterization.
Or
especially, yeah, right. Well, that's really strange. But especially in that small town culture, it's not quite so parochial as that anymore. But within Greek society, and you will know this as much as I do, it's a very male-oriented culture.
Yes, absolutely.
And so women kind of are there to raise the sons and take care of the parents, and that's your obligation. You work very hard at the church, but it's always behind the scenes. And so I think we have some kind of sexism to overcome.
That's one of my questions. Like, did you have to overcome cultural baggage, somebody calls it, in order to, fully realize your potential?
Well, I think it's hard for women in politics generally. I mean, we've made some cracks in the glass ceiling, but we have a long way to go. And there are certain prejudices against women. It's harder for women to raise money. The press tends to stereotype women. So that's generally across the board. Greek women, though, within their own subculture, have to have more to prove, and they have to just work harder and be smarter, and yet we can do it.
Have you had to contend with any sort of other, because we are, it's a minority enough that we're women, but being a Greek American woman, as a hybrid American, as an ethnic minority, did you have to deal with any sort of stereotyping in that arena?
Well, there's always going to be biases against immigrants, and you see that a lot in today's political arena. And so a lot of immigrants all just kind of get painted with the same brush, and we see that. But here in the Congress, we have a good bipartisan caucus with Gus and John and myself. Nikki Tsongas, who was married to a Greek, is part of that group as well. So I don't feel it. And in my district at home, I don't feel it. The Greek church is located in my district. The Armenian church is in the district too, and they are natural allies. And so I don't feel like there's any discrimination. And we love to have Greeks come to my district, which is the heart of Las Vegas, because Greeks like to gamble.
Okay, that is true. Because you are one of the few women in Congress, and Greek women, how has your gender influenced the policies you've taken? Have you had policies that you've enacted in your term, either as senator or congresswoman, that are particularly meaningful for women and girls?
Well, I'm a part of the Women's Caucus, part of the pro-choice caucus. I'm part of a caucus of women who care about mothers and children in the immigration process, because immigration affects the whole family, not just the man who leaves and comes. So those aren't particularly Greek, but they are pro-woman. I'm very strong on the Violence Against Women Act. That was something, and I've been working very hard on women veterans, because women veterans are kind of the hidden veterans. They don't tend to come forward and ask for benefits that they've earned, too, as much as male veterans do. So that agenda is very important to me.
I think you've also initiated certain bills that have to do with women's health. Was there one where it had to do with the vaccination?
That's right. That was in the state legislature, to have insurance cover the HPV vaccine, which is to help prevent cancer in young women. And we got that through the state legislature, awesome. And you're seeing other states do it as well, because if you can prevent that, that's certainly important to do. What are the issues that are particularly pressing for you at the moment? Well, I serve on the Transportation Committee, the Aviation Subcommittee, and the Highway Subcommittee. That doesn't sound very exciting, but if you think about Las Vegas, located in the middle of the desert, transportation is very important to my district, because you got to get people there, or else we won't exist, because it's all about tourism and holidays and vacations. So transportation is important. I'm on the Veterans Committee, so I'm working on those issues, especially, as I mentioned, women veterans. So those are priorities. I live in a desert, so all kind of environmental water issues are important. And gaming, because gaming is kind of the lifeblood of the people who live and work in my district. What advice would you give to aspiring women? A lot of the people who follow me and who read my website and are part of my foundation are Greek women of the diaspora, not just Americans. I have from all over the world. What advice would you give to a young woman who is aspiring to live to the best of her potential? Well, I would say that generally speaking, the world is your oyster. There is nothing that you can't do if you put your mind to it. If you're interested in going into politics, some specific advice I would say is do an internship. I reach out to the group that travels back to Greece on the regular kind of the legacy visits, and to students who are of Greek background, and say, come do an internship in my office. See what it's really like. Make contacts, build your resume, and next thing you know, you'll be running for office too. Just to kind of apprentice yourself to somebody like me who wants to leave a legacy and have you carry it on. Who have been your role models? Because there's not many women in politics, as you said, and there's even less women of Greek descent. So who informed you growing up to be who you are? Well, I don't know about women. You always point to special teachers who have inspired you, and that was the case. I got a very good education, and I think teachers put me on the right path. My grandfather, because
Talk to me about your grandfather.
Well, he was quite a character, and he was in the restaurant business, and I adored him. I wish he were still alive to see me here in Congress. He would just be so proud. And I go back to Greece as often as possible, every other year at least, just to keep those connections. And so it's something I feel very, very proud of and very personally attached to. Which part of Greece have you been able to trace? He was from Athens, but they had a country place up near Trikala in the mountains outside of Delphi. But I've traveled in all parts of Greece, but that was home. And I have looked up relatives and that I just knew about but have never met, and now have stayed in touch with. But I would say to those young women, look me up and come work for me, because there'd be great opportunities. Awesome. Okay. All right. Thank you very much for taking the time out from your busy schedule to speak to us and a lot of the Greek women who might just be giving you an email soon. Well, thank you for doing this. Thank you.